1923. Across 5 southern states, more than 300 members of the Ku Klux Klan were found dead. Their bodies delivered to courthouses, rail depots, and sheriff offices that quietly paid for their removal. The payments were legal enough to leave receipts, and anonymous enough to keep white hands clean. The Klan believed they were untouchable, protected by badges, judges, and burning crosses, but their own arrogance created a market for their deaths. County officials wanted the loud ones gone, business leaders wanted stability, and someone was willing to collect. What no one expected was a black married couple, invisible by design, turning white bureaucracy into a weapon. By the time the Klan realized they were being hunted, the money was spent, the records were sealed, and the bodies were already counted. Who were the hunters the South paid to erase its own terror? And what finally stopped them? Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Dawn crept over the Mississippi back road like spilled milk, turning the mud to pewter. The wagon wheels creaked through deep ruts, each jolt making the oilcloth-wrapped bundle shift between Ezekiel and Lillian Carter. Neither spoke. They hadn't needed words since midnight, when they'd waited in the shadows behind Mr. Clayton's barn. Zeke's hands were steady on the reins, but Lily noticed how his jaw tightened each time they hit a bump. The bundle would slide, and his shoulders would stiffen just a fraction. 20 years of marriage had taught her to read those tiny movements like a book. The man under the oilcloth had a name: Thomas Whitaker. Everyone knew he worked for the Klan, though he never wore the hood in public. Didn't need to. His reputation was enough to make folks cross the street when they saw him coming. Last night, he'd killed Jacob Turner, a black farmer who dared to sell his cotton directly to the mills instead of through white middlemen. They'd watched Whitaker stumble drunk from Clayton's barn. One pull of the trigger, and 20 years of terror ended in the mud. Quick, clean, nothing like what he'd done to Jacob Turner. The sun climbed higher as they approached town, painting the courthouse dome gold. Lily kept her eyes down, counting the loose bills hidden in her dress pocket. Their emergency money, saved penny by penny over 5 careful years. Money they might need if this gamble went wrong. Almost there, Zeke murmured, his first words since they'd lifted the body into the wagon. His voice was rough, like he'd been gargling nails. Lily touched his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. "We stick to the plan," she whispered back. Simple words that carried the weight of their whole marriage. Trust, partnership, survival. The sheriff's office squatted behind the courthouse, a brick building with barred windows and a tin roof that needed painting. Few people were on the streets this early. A blessing. They didn't need witnesses, even if what they were doing was technically legal. Sheriff Wilkes met them at the back door, his face carefully blank. He was a big man going soft around the middle, with pale eyes that never quite met theirs. "Bring him in quick," he said, holding the door wide. Inside smelled of stale coffee and old tobacco. Zeke and Lily carried the bundle between them, laying it on the sheriff's desk. When Wilkes pulled back the oilcloth, his expression didn't change, but his fingers twitched. "That's him all right," the sheriff said, covering the face again. He opened his desk drawer and removed a manila envelope, thick with cash. "Private county matter," he added, almost like he was talking to himself. "Best forgotten by all parties." Zeke took the envelope, tucking it inside his coat. Not a word was spoken about Jacob Turner. Not a word about justice or right or wrong. Just a business transaction, neat and clean as buying a sack of flour. They were back in the wagon before the sun cleared the trees. Lily watched the sheriff's office shrink in the distance, her mind working like a spinning wheel. The weight of what they'd done pressed down on her chest, but something else was rising too. A cold, careful kind of calculation. The midday sun beat down as they turned onto the road home. Heat shimmered off the packed dirt, making the air dance. Lily finally reached for the envelope in Zeke's coat. Her fingers were steady as she counted. $500. Far more than they'd expected. Far more than any private county matter should warrant. This wasn't charity or conscience money. This was a payment for services rendered. The bills felt heavy in her hands, clean, crisp, like they'd been waiting in that drawer for someone to earn them. Like maybe there were more envelopes just like it, waiting for other problems to be solved. Lily looked at her husband's profile, saw the weight of the morning in the lines around his eyes. She thought about Jacob Turner's widow and children, about all the other families who'd lost someone to men like Thomas Whitaker, about how power worked in the South, not just through violence, but through money and secrets and careful arrangements. "How many more like him you reckon they want gone?" she asked, her voice calm as still water. The wagon wheels kept turning, throwing up puffs of dust that hung in the hot air like ghosts. The afternoon sun baked the earth as Lily and Zeke's wagon rolled up to their small farmhouse. While Zeke tended to the horses, Lily sat at their kitchen table, spreading the contents of the envelope across the worn wood. 5 crisp $100 bills, and beneath them, a small slip of paper she hadn't noticed before. It was a receipt, printed on thick bank paper. In the corner was a number, R1847 MS. Her fingers traced the raised ink, mind working. After 20 years teaching arithmetic to black children, she knew numbers often held secrets. "Zeke," she called softly, "come look at this." He appeared in the doorway, still dusty from the morning's work. His eyes were tired but alert. "What you found?" "Receipt number. Printed proper, like from a bank." She held it up to the light. "Too official for a backroom payment." Zeke pulled up a chair, the wood creaking under his weight. "Could be nothing. Could be something," Lily countered. She folded the receipt carefully and tucked it into her dress pocket. "I need to see Marcus." Marcus Williams worked as a clerk at the railroad freight office. He'd been one of her brightest students before the white school board fired her for teaching dangerous ideas like algebra and history. Now he handled shipping manifests and account books, learning the secret language of commerce that kept the South running. The freight office was quiet when Lily arrived, the day's shipments already processed. Marcus was alone, organizing papers behind the colored window. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Mrs. Carter, everything all right? Need your help understanding something, Marcus." She slid the receipt through the window. "Ever see numbers like this come through?" Marcus adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, studying the slip. His expression shifted slightly, so slight only a teacher would notice. "Where'd you get this?" "Private matter, but I need to know what it means." He glanced around the empty office before leaning closer to the window. "These come through sometimes, always with special handling instructions, always paid out through specific banks." He paused. "Always after certain problems get solved." "Bounties," Lily said softly. Marcus nodded. "Not official ones, but the money's real enough. Railroad handles some. Banks handle more. Everything gets a number, gets tracked." He handed the receipt back. "Be careful asking about these, Mrs. Carter. Some questions ain't safe." Lily spent the next few hours moving between the colored sections of 3 different banks. At each one, she found former students working as porters or cleaners. Each one offered another piece of the puzzle. Dates, amounts, patterns. By nightfall, she had a clear picture. When she returned home, Zeke was in the barn. The steady scrape of steel on whetstone filled the warm air. He'd been sharpening tools all day. Plowshares, hoes, the long knife he'd carried in France during the war. His hands never seemed to stop moving lately. "Found something," Lily said, sitting on a hay bale. She laid out her notes as Zeke kept working the stone. "These receipts, they're part of a system. Counties all over are putting out quiet bounties on Klansmen who've become problems. Men who kill too openly, who embarrass the wrong people, who know too much." The whetstone paused. "How many?" "Found 2 more just today. One in Jefferson County. that Klansman who burned down the white church by accident. Another in Clark County, man who killed a visiting northern businessman. She smoothed the papers with careful fingers. $500 each. Clean cash, no questions asked. Zeke set down the knife he'd been sharpening. In the fading light, his face looked carved from shadow. This morning. What we did. That wasn't just about Jacob Turner, was it? No. Lily met his eyes. It was business. Their business. They're cleaning house, using people like us to do their dirty work. Using us, Zeke repeated. His hands were still now, resting on his knees. We could do one more, Lily said carefully. Just one. Enough money to get north, maybe all the way to Chicago. Start fresh, where nobody knows us. The barn grew darker as the sun slipped below the horizon. Through the open door, they could see fireflies beginning to dance in the gathering dusk. Everything familiar suddenly felt temporary, like a stage set about to be struck. Zeke picked up the knife he'd been sharpening, testing the edge with his thumb. One more, he agreed quietly. Then we leave this place behind. Lily watched her husband's face in the half-light, reading the cost there. Tomorrow she would travel to the next county over, where she'd confirmed another bounty was waiting. Tomorrow they would step deeper into this shadow world of receipts and retribution. But tonight they sat together in their barn, listening to crickets begin their evening song, holding on to the fiction that this would be the last time. The eastern sky was still black when Lily woke Zeke. They dressed in silence, their movements practiced from years of dawn farm work. Lily packed dried meat and cornbread while Zeke readied the wagon. Their target would be traveling the old logging road between Greenwood and Oxford. A Klansman named Samuel Whitaker heading to a regional meeting. Road curves twice through the cypress grove, Lily said, spreading a hand-drawn map on their kitchen table. Second bend's the blindest. Trees grow thick there. Zeke nodded, studying the route. How long's the wait? He always passes before noon, regular as church bells. Lily folded the map carefully. Marcus says he takes the same path every month, riding alone. They left while stars still dotted the sky. The wagon wheels whispered through morning mist as they followed back roads to the cypress grove. Zeke positioned the wagon off the main path, hidden by drooping moss and tangled vines. They settled in to wait. The sun climbed slowly. Birds woke. Insects hummed. Lily kept watch while Zeke dozed, his soldier's ability to grab sleep whenever possible unchanged by the years. Around mid-morning, hoofbeats approached. Zeke was awake instantly, moving with fluid grace into position. Lily stayed with the wagon, ready. Samuel Whitaker appeared around the first bend, riding a well-groomed bay horse. His clan robes were packed in his saddlebag. They'd seen him loading them earlier. He was whistling. The ambush was swift and silent. Zeke stepped out, greeting Whitaker like a friendly stranger asking directions. When Whitaker leaned down to point the way, the war knife flashed once. No sound but the thump of a body hitting dirt. Lily helped wrap the corpse in oilcloth, while Zeke calmed the spooked horse and led it deep into the woods to run free. They worked efficiently, leaving no trace. By early afternoon, they were pulling up to a different sheriff's office in the next county. This sheriff was younger than the last, but his eyes held the same calculated disinterest. He confirmed the identity with a glance, handed over another envelope, and turned away. No names were exchanged, no questions asked. That evening, Lily opened a fresh ledger, plain black leather, nothing distinctive. In careful handwriting, she recorded the date, location, name, and amount. Samuel Whitaker, $500, Oxford Road. Her teacher's precision showing in each neat line. The pattern repeated over the following weeks. Every few days, another name would surface through Marcus's network of freight clerks and bank porters. Lily would verify the bounty, plan the route, and Zeke would execute with quiet efficiency. Different counties, different sheriffs, but always the same envelope of cash waiting. They developed a rhythm, wake before dawn. travel back roads. Wait in silence. Strike fast. Deliver by sunset. Record in the ledger after dark. Then start again. But the names started carrying weight. William Carson, who'd helped burn down Lily's schoolhouse. Thomas Reed, who'd beaten Zeke's elderly uncle nearly blind. James Cooper, who'd murdered Zeke's cousin Luther while his children watched. When Cooper's name came up, Zeke's hands shook for the first time. "Remember Luther's funeral?" he asked softly. His kids asking why the box was closed? Lily touched his arm gently. "I remember." The next day, Cooper's death took longer than usual. Zeke's war knife wasn't as quick. Lily said nothing about the extra cuts she saw while wrapping the body. Months passed, marked by ink-filling ledger pages. Summer heat gave way to autumn chill. They ranged further, following the web of bounties across state lines: Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana. The wagon wheels traced a map of retribution across the South. One cold November evening, Lily sat at their kitchen table counting entries by lamplight. The ledger had grown thick with names and dates. Each page a record of violence answered with violence. 307 confirmed kills across 5 states. All Klansmen, all paid for by the very system they served. She looked up at Zeke, who was cleaning his knife by the fire. "We're not running anymore, are we?" He tested the blade's edge, movements precise. "No," he said quietly. "We're hunting." Lily ran her fingers over the ledger's pages, feeling the slight indentations of hundreds of names. They weren't just surviving now. They were systematically dismantling the Ku Klux Klan, one bounty at a time. The realization settled over her like a heavy cloak. They had become the South's dark machinery of justice, grinding slowly but inexorably toward something like vengeance. The morning light crept through threadbare curtains as Lily added another entry to the ledger. Zeke sat at their small table, hands wrapped around a cooling coffee cup. Neither spoke of last night's count. 307 was too heavy a number for dawn conversation. Marcus, their railroad contact, arrived with the morning freight report. His hands shook slightly as he handed Lily a folded paper. "Meeting's getting smaller," he whispered. "Klan chapter in Greenwood. Only 6 showed up last week. Used to be 30. Lily noted this in the margins of her ledger, while Zeke watched silently. Over the next few days, similar reports trickled in. A Klan rally in Meridian canceled due to insufficient attendance. 3 cross burnings postponed in Alabama. Local chapters arguing over territory and leadership. "They're eating themselves," Lily observed, reviewing her notes. "Like rats in a flooding barn." They boarded a train 4 days later, dressed in worn servants' clothes. Lily carried a battered carpetbag containing little more than the ledger and fresh bounty notices. The porter, another of Marcus's network, directed them to the colored car without meeting their eyes. December 12th. Athens, Georgia. The ledger recorded 2 names, brothers who'd terrorized a black church congregation. The bodies were delivered before sunset. December 15th. Birmingham, Alabama. A night rider who'd assaulted women walking home from factory work. His horse was found wandering riderless. December 18th. Jackson, Mississippi. A Klan recruiter who'd been forcing sharecroppers to join. His disappearance caused 3 false arrests as local authorities blamed each other. Between kills, they gathered intelligence. Lily's network of porters, maids, and freight clerks painted a picture of growing paranoia. White power structures were fracturing. County officials accused rival counties of overstepping boundaries. Sheriffs launched investigations that went nowhere. But it was the businessmen that surprised them most. A banker in Montgomery quietly issued bounties on Klansmen who'd threatened his black customers, not from moral outrage, but fear of lost profits. A factory owner in Augusta wanted troublemakers removed to prevent worker unrest. "They're using us to clean house," Zeke said one evening, his voice hollow. They were sharing a cold supper in a boarding house kitchen, making us do their dirty work. Lily didn't look up from her ledger. Does it matter? Dead is dead. Zeke's nightmares grew worse. He woke in cold sweats, muttering names, not just recent kills, but old wartime ghosts, too. The faces blurred together in his dreams. German soldiers, Klansmen, all wearing white masks that melted like wax. Lily watched him thrash in rented beds, but never reached out to comfort. Her own emotions had frozen into something hard and precise as arithmetic. She measured success in ledger entries and cash counted. Each kill was the equation balanced in blood. They moved constantly, never sleeping in the same town twice. Train platforms and wagon roads blurred together. Their method remained unchanged. Gather intelligence, verify the bounty, execute quickly, collect payment, record the details. The work was almost mechanical now. December 22nd found them in a small hotel in Louisiana. Their room was barely big enough for a narrow bed and washstand, but it had a window overlooking the street. Lily sat beside it, reviewing recent entries while Zeke cleaned his knife with methodical focus. Voices drifted up from the alley below. Two white men speaking in urgent whispers that carried through the thin walls. Lily moved closer to listen, her pencil poised over the ledger. 3 more gone this week, one voice said. Can't be random anymore. Heard Tucker talking about colored hunters, the second voice replied. Says they're organized, moving county to county like ghosts. Impossible. No colored would dare. Then explain the bodies. Explain why half the chapter won't show for meetings no more. Could be the sheriff's men. Sheriff's scared too. Whole clans spooked. Tucker says they're tracking patterns now, trying to predict where the hunters'll strike next. The voices moved away, footsteps fading into the night. Lily closed her ledger slowly, looking at Zeke. His knife had gone still in his hands. For the first time since they'd begun, the Ku Klux Klan knew they were being hunted. Not by white law enforcement or rival chapters, but by something they'd never considered. Organized black resistance moving invisibly through their own systems of power. The room felt smaller suddenly. Lily could hear her own heartbeat, steady as a metronome. Outside, a train whistled mournfully in the distance, their signal to move on before dawn. Elias Hargrove's office smelled of leather and tobacco as morning sunlight filtered through heavy curtains. 5 Klan leaders sat around his polished oak desk, their faces drawn with worry. Papers and telegrams covered the desktop. Death notices, bank records, and hastily scribbled reports from across 3 states. 37 of our brothers gone in December alone, Hargrove said, his voice tight with controlled anger. He was a tall man with graying temples and expensive clothes that spoke of old money. Not random deaths, not accidents. Someone is hunting us. He spread out a map marked with red dots, each representing a dead Klansman. The pattern was clear now. A methodical progression through counties, following rail lines and back roads. Look here, he pointed to a series of bank drafts. Money changing hands after each death. Counties paying bounties through freight offices, using receipt numbers to hide the trail. His finger jabbed at the papers. But they made a mistake. The numbers follow a pattern. Someone inside the railroad is helping them track our people. The other men shifted uncomfortably. They were used to being the hunters, not the prey. Colored hunters, one man muttered. It ain't possible. It's happening, Hargrove snapped. While we've been worried about federal agents and newspapermen, they've been using our own system against us, moving invisible because we never thought to look down at the help. He pulled out more papers, descriptions gathered from sheriff's offices and station masters. A couple, always properly dressed, always quiet. The man tall and steady-handed, the woman carrying a carpet bag. They're organized, Hargrove continued. Professional. This isn't random violence. It's systematic elimination, and they're being paid for it by our own people. His voice dripped with disgust. "Businessmen and politicians who think they can control us by culling the ranks." Meanwhile, 200 miles away, Zeke and Lily approached another sheriff's office with their latest delivery. The morning was cold, their breath fogging in the air. Something felt wrong before they even reached the door. The sheriff met them on the porch, hand resting obviously on his holster. His face was tight with barely contained panic. "Turn around," he said quietly. "Now, whatever you're carrying, take it elsewhere." "We have business," Lily started to say. "Not anymore." The sheriff glanced nervously at the street. "Words come down. No more payments. No more quiet disposals. You need to be gone before sunset." They left without argument, the wrapped body still in their wagon. As they drove out of town, Lily noticed men watching from doorways and windows. White faces filled with a familiar hatred, but now mixed with something new, fear. They found a remote spot to bury the body, working quickly as the sun dropped toward the horizon. Zeke's hands shook slightly as he filled in the grave. "They know about us," he said. "Really know now?" Lily nodded, already calculating their next move. They needed to reach their boarding house, gather their things, and be on the next train out. But darkness fell too quickly. As they approached their lodging, an orange glow lit the sky. A cross burned in the field behind the house, flames reaching 30 feet high. The message was clear. They'd been found. They didn't stop to pack. Lily grabbed only her ledger and the cash sewn into her skirt hem. They took back alleys to the freight yard, where Marcus waited with 2 empty cargo crates and fresh papers. "They're watching the passenger platforms," he whispered as he helped them hide. "But I can get you out on the midnight freight to Memphis." As they huddled in darkness among cotton bales, Lily studied a crumpled paper Marcus had passed her. It was a bounty notice, not official like the others, but a handwritten message passed through clan networks across 3 states. The words were simple: Negro hunters, man and woman, moving by rail, $1,000 alive, 500 dead. Lily's hand found Zeke's in the darkness. The hunters had become the hunted. Every station, every road, every small town would be watching for them now. The invisible system they'd used so effectively had turned against them. The train shuddered to life, wheels grinding on steel rails. As they pulled away from the burning cross, Lily could feel the weight of her ledger against her chest. 307 names. 307 carefully planned executions. Each one had brought them to this moment. She wondered, as the town disappeared behind them, how many names were left to add before the work was truly finished. The morning sun beat down on their stolen wagon as it rattled along the dirt road. Zeke's hands were tight on the reins, his jaw clenched. They'd been moving steadily since their midnight escape by freight train, changing transportation 3 times to throw off pursuit. "We need to stop," Zeke said finally, breaking hours of silence. "Get our bearings. Make a real plan." Lily didn't look up from her ledger, where she was making careful notes. "Can't stop. Not now. They'll be watching every town." "That's exactly why we need to think this through." Zeke's voice was rough with exhaustion. "We can't keep running blind." "We're not running blind." Lily turned a page, comparing 2 columns of numbers. "I've been tracking money transfers. There's a pattern to how they're moving funds between chapters." The wagon hit a deep rut, making them both grab for balance. Zeke pulled the horses to a slower pace. "You're not listening, Lily. We need rest, food, time to think clear. What we need is to finish this." She finally looked up at him, her eyes hard. "We're close to something big. These numbers show they're preparing for major operations across 3 states. If we stop now, we lose our chance to tear it all down." They made camp that night in a hidden grove, but neither slept well. Zeke pulled out a flask he'd been carrying, taking long drinks as he stared into their small fire. Lily pretended not to notice. The next morning found them back on the road, tension thick between them. Zeke's hands shook slightly as he drove. Lily kept writing, muttering numbers under her breath. "You're pushing too hard," Zeke said, as they passed another small town without stopping. "Getting reckless." "I'm being thorough." Lily's pencil scratched across paper. "These ledger entries show at least $50,000 moving through private accounts, money tied directly to clan leadership. And what good is that information if we're dead?" Zeke's voice cracked. "You saw that bounty notice. Every white man with a gun will be looking for us. Good. Let them look. While they're searching, I'll use their own greed to destroy them." The argument continued over the next 2 days, growing sharper even as they kept their voices low. They slept in shifts, moved only at odd hours, and avoided main roads. Zeke drank more each night. Lily's writing became more frantic, filling pages with calculations and connections. On the 4th morning, she finally shared her full plan. They'd stopped in a dense forest, spreading her papers across a fallen log. "Look here." She pointed to a complex web of numbers and names. "Every major chapter requires members to pay dues. That money goes through local banks, then gets transferred to regional leaders. But some of those leaders are skimming funds, hiding the money in private accounts." Zeke rubbed his bloodshot eyes. So if we expose the theft, it will trigger internal investigations. Chapter leaders will turn on each other. The whole system will eat itself. And how exactly do we expose anything? We're fugitives, Lily. Our word means nothing. She smiled thinly. We don't say a word. We just make sure certain bank records reach certain angry clansmen. Let them tear each other apart. The plan took 3 days to execute. They moved carefully between towns, Lily dropping carefully forged documents where they would be found. Anonymous letters containing proof of embezzlement, bank statements showing missing funds, each piece designed to create maximum suspicion and rage. Zeke handled the physical work with military precision, despite his shaking hands and bleary eyes. Lily coordinated everything from hidden camping spots, tracking each piece of information like moves on a chessboard. By the 7th day, they started hearing results. Rumors of fistfights between clan leaders, accusations of theft, chapter meetings erupting into violence. The organization was tearing itself apart from the inside. "It's working," Lily said that evening, reading a smuggled newspaper. 3 chapter leaders arrested for fraud. 2 more gone into hiding. They're destroying themselves. Zeke nodded tiredly. He'd stopped drinking that morning, but his hands still trembled. As he scanned the tree line out of habit, something caught his eye. A flash of movement, quickly hidden. He studied the spot carefully, keeping his voice casual. "Lily, pack up the papers. Now!" She looked up sharply at his tone. "What is it?" "We're being followed. Don't look, just pack. Someone's been tracking us through these woods." The sun was setting when they heard the horses. Not the thundering charge of clansmen, but the disciplined approach of lawmen. Zeke recognized the difference immediately. His time in France had taught him how trained men moved. "Run," he whispered to Lily, pushing her toward the deepest part of the woods. "Take the ledger. Don't look back." She clutched the book to her chest, hesitating. "Zeke, go!" He gave her another push, then turned to face the approaching riders. They emerged from the trees like shadows, 6 deputies in official uniforms, guns already drawn. Their badges caught the dying light. Zeke kept his hands visible, showing empty palms. "Evening, officers," he said quietly. The lead deputy dismounted smoothly. "Ezekiel Carter, you've caused quite a stir these past months." "Don't know what you mean, sir." Zeke's voice remained steady, though his heart hammered. He could hear Lily's soft footsteps retreating through the underbrush. "I think you do." The deputy approached slowly, handcuffs gleaming. 300 bodies is hard to ignore, even when they're wearing white hoods. The cuffs closed around Zeke's wrists with a final click. They searched him thoroughly but efficiently, professional in their movements. No rough handling, no racial slurs, just the cold procedure of law enforcement doing its job. They led him to the county jail, a solid brick building with iron bars and thick walls. The cell they put him in was clean, with a proper cot instead of straw. This wasn't the usual accommodation for colored prisoners. Through his barred window, Zeke watched night settle over the town. He thought of Lily out there alone, praying she'd found safe shelter. Sleep never came. Morning arrived with footsteps on the jail's wooden floor. A woman's voice, Lily's voice, cut through his exhaustion. "I'm here to post bail for my husband," she said clearly. The sheriff's response was too quiet to hear. Then Lily again. "I have money." "This ain't about money, ma'am." The sheriff appeared in front of Zeke's cell, Lily beside him. Her dress was clean, her hair neat. She'd found somewhere to refresh herself despite running all night. "Then what is it about?" she demanded. The sheriff studied them both. He was an older man, gray-haired and heavy-set, with tired eyes that had seen too much. "It's about order, balance, the way things work down here." "The bounties," Lily said flatly. "Yes, ma'am. Those bounties weren't meant to destroy the clan. They were meant to control it." He sighed heavily. "Sometimes organizations get too big, too wild, need trimming back, like a rose bush gone wild." Lily's face hardened. "So you used us? Used black hands to do your dirty work?" "It was working fine. The violent ones, the troublemakers, they disappeared. The rest fell in line. System cleaned itself up." He shook his head. "But you got greedy. Started taking too many. Drawing attention. They're murderers." Lily's voice shook with rage. "Every single one we killed had blood on their hands." "Maybe so, but that's not how things work here." The sheriff pulled out transfer papers. "Your husband's being moved to the state prison tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp." Zeke saw Lily go very still. They both knew what transfer meant for a black prisoner. An accident on the road, an escape attempt stopped with bullets, a body in a ditch. "He hasn't been charged with anything," Lily said carefully. "Hasn't seen a judge. Won't need to." The sheriff's voice was almost gentle. "Paperwork's already done. Nothing personal, just maintaining order." He left them alone for 5 minutes. Lily came to the bars, her hands gripping the iron until her knuckles went white. "Listen to me," she whispered urgently. "I have everything. All their records, their secrets, their dirty money. Every name, every transaction." "Lily," Zeke started. "No." Her eyes blazed. "They think they can use us, then throw us away? They think they control the system?" She laughed, a sharp, dangerous sound. "I'll burn their whole world down. Every bank record, every secret ledger, every dirty deal. I'll expose it all. They'll kill you," Zeke said softly. "Let them try." She reached through the bars to touch his face. "I love you. Trust me." The sheriff's boots sounded on the floor again. Lily straightened, smoothing her dress. "Time's up," the sheriff called. Lily turned to go, then paused. "Sheriff? About maintaining order?" Her voice was perfectly calm. "You should have remembered who actually keeps your books, who handles your papers, who knows your real numbers." She walked out, back straight, steps measured. The sheriff watched her go with suddenly uncertain eyes. Through his window, Zeke watched his wife disappear into the morning crowd. He knew that walk, that set of her shoulders. Lily wasn't running now. She was hunting. The afternoon sun beat down on the newspaper office as Lily pushed through the door. Her valise was heavy with copied pages from the ledger, each one carefully selected. The editor, Mr. Harrison, looked up from his desk with irritation that quickly turned to concern when she laid the first document before him. "Mrs. Carter," he said slowly, "these are very serious accusations." "They're not accusations," Lily's voice was steady. "They're bank records, government receipts, official documents showing systematic murder for hire across 5 states. She watched his eyes scan the pages, noting how his hands began to shake. Names of respected businessmen, politicians, and lawmen filled column after column, each tied to bounty payments and coded transactions. Publishing this would be— He swallowed hard. Dangerous. Lily smiled thinly. More dangerous than what's happening to my husband tomorrow morning? By sunset, copies of the documents were in the hands of 3 more newspapers across county lines. Lily moved methodically, working her way through a mental list of pressure points. Each stop was calculated, each revelation precisely measured. As night fell, she visited Marcus Wells, a black bank clerk who had helped her decode the receipt numbers months ago. He worked late, as always, cleaning up after the white bankers left. "I need you to make some copies," she told him, spreading out more papers. "And then I need you to make some calls." Marcus studied the documents, whistling softly. "Miss Lily, this here's dynamite." "That's the idea." Through the night, telegrams moved between banks. Questions were raised about irregular transactions. Auditors were quietly alerted. By dawn of the first day, the financial system began to tremble. Lily didn't sleep. She moved from contact to contact, building pressure from multiple directions. A rival sheriff in the next county received proof of corruption. A state representative got evidence of misappropriated funds. Religious leaders learned of murders sanctioned by their own deacons. The afternoon of the first day, the sheriff who held Zeke received 3 separate calls from his bank. By evening, the Ku Klux Klan's private meeting hall burned, not from outside attack, but from members destroying their own records. Through it all, Lily kept moving. She wore her best dress, spoke softly, and carried her evidence in a proper leather case. She looked exactly like what she had been, a schoolteacher. It made her invisible, forgettable, right up until she struck. The morning of the second day, panic bloomed fully. Banks delayed opening. Officials called emergency meetings. Clerks reported missing files. The system that had used them was now eating itself, desperately trying to contain the damage. Lily watched it all from carefully chosen vantage points. She saw white men in expensive suits rushing between buildings, their faces tight with fear. She heard whispered conversations cut off when people walked past. She smiled. Just after noon, a messenger found her at the colored boarding house where she'd taken a room. "Sheriff wants to see you," the boy said nervously. "Says it's about your husband." The jail was quiet when she arrived. The sheriff looked like he hadn't slept, his face gray with exhaustion and worry. "You've made your point," he said without preamble. "Have I?" Lily sat primly in the wooden chair across from his desk. "I have so many more documents to share. So many more people to talk to." He rubbed his face. "What do you want?" "My husband. Released. Today. There are procedures." "No." Lily's voice could have frozen fire. "Today. Now. Or tomorrow every newspaper in 3 states prints the truth about who really controls the Klan." The sheriff stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached for his keys. Dawn of the third day broke cold and clear. Zeke walked out of his cell under armed guard, his face carefully blank. No words were spoken as they led him to the street where Lily waited. The sheriff cleared his throat. "You understand that if anything else comes to light, if any papers get published—" "We understand," Lily said calmly. "Leave town," he said. "Today. Don't come back." They walked away slowly, deliberately. Neither looked back. They didn't speak until they were 3 blocks away, turned onto a quiet side street. "You did it," Zeke whispered. "They thought they owned the system." Lily's hand found his, squeezed tight. "They forgot that systems run on paper, and paper can burn." The morning light grew stronger as they walked, casting long shadows behind them. The town was waking up, still unaware of how much had changed in just 2 days. How many powerful men were now terrified of a schoolteacher's ledger? They reached the edge of town just as church bells began to ring. Behind them, the county records building stood silent and dark, its windows reflecting the rising sun. Inside, dozens of files were already missing, removed by panicked hands in the night. The system was protecting itself the only way it knew how, by erasing its own sins. The morning sun climbed higher as Lily and Zeke boarded a local train heading east. Their new papers, crafted by Marcus Wells's cousin who worked at the courthouse, identified them as James and Mary Wilson, a respectable couple from Mobile. Lily sat straight-backed in the colored car, her gloved hands folded neatly in her lap. The leather case containing their forged documents rested between her feet. Beside her, Zeke stared out the window, his face still drawn from his days in the cell. "First step is Atlanta," she whispered, keeping her voice low despite the rattling of the train. "Then north from there." Zeke nodded slightly. "How long we staying each place?" "Long enough to establish the pattern. Then move before anyone looks too close." The train journey took them through small towns and dense forests. At each stop, Lily watched carefully as passengers came and went. No one paid them any particular attention. They were just another colored couple traveling for work, invisible in plain sight. They spent 3 days in Atlanta, staying in a boarding house run by a stern-faced widow who asked no questions as long as the rent was paid on time. Lily used the time to acquire more papers, birth certificates, marriage license, work references, all carefully aged to look authentic. "These cost most of what we had left," Zeke said on their third night, counting the remaining money. "We'll earn more," Lily assured him. "Honest work this time." They left Atlanta before dawn on the fourth day, taking a series of short train rides north through Georgia. Each stop was calculated, each interaction carefully managed. They spent 2 days in Chattanooga, 3 in Knoxville, building a trail of ordinary life behind them. In Virginia, they paused for a week. Lily found work as a substitute teacher in a colored school, while Zeke took odd jobs at the rail yard. They lived simply, spoke quietly, and kept to themselves. When neighbors asked, they were from Mobile, headed to find work in the big northern cities. "You're good at this," Zeke remarked one evening, as they ate dinner in their rented room. "Making us new people." Lily looked up from her plate. "I'm good at understanding systems. People believe what fits their expectations." The next week took them through Maryland. They changed trains 3 times, always buying tickets with cash, never staying more than 2 nights in one place. Lily kept their documents organized, maintaining their cover story with quiet precision. In Philadelphia, they rested for 10 days. The city's size offered anonymity, and its large colored population meant they didn't stand out. Zeke found work at a factory, while Lily carefully inquired about teaching positions further north. "Massachusetts," she decided one evening, spreading a map on their bed. "Small town called Springfield. Far enough from everything." Zeke studied the map. "Why there?" "Good schools, manufacturing work, and no one asks too many questions about where people came from." The final leg of their journey took 3 days. They traveled as James and Mary Wilson for the last time, their old identities becoming more distant with each mile. In Springfield, they would become Robert and Sarah Johnson, using the last set of papers Marcus's cousin had prepared. Springfield greeted them with fall colors and cool air. They found a small apartment in the colored section of town, paid first month's rent with their dwindling savings. Lily immediately applied to teach at the local colored school, while Zeke secured work at a tool factory. "Different kind of life," he said, their first night in the apartment, looking out at the unfamiliar street. Lily stood beside him, her hand finding his. "But our own life." Over the next 2 weeks, they settled into a routine. Lily was hired to teach 3rd grade. Zeke's factory work was steady. They spoke to neighbors just enough to be friendly, but not memorable. Robert and Sarah Johnson became real, while Ezekiel and Lillian Carter faded like old photographs. Each morning, they walked to work by different routes. Each evening, they came home to their small apartment and lived quietly. They attended church on Sundays, nodded politely to neighbors, and slowly built the framework of ordinary life. "Think anyone's still looking?" Zeke asked one evening, 3 weeks after arriving. "No," Lily replied, certainty in her voice. "They're too busy protecting themselves. We're safer forgotten." The maple trees outside their window turned bright red as October settled in. Their apartment gradually filled with simple necessities: books, kitchen items, a second-hand radio. Robert and Sarah Johnson became known as a quiet, hard-working couple who kept to themselves. Each night, they locked their door carefully. Each morning, they checked the newspapers for any news from the South. But the stories that might have been never appeared. The system had protected itself through silence, burying its secrets deeper than any grave. In their new life, they were careful to be unremarkable. Just another colored couple who had moved north for work. Their neighbors would never know that beneath their quiet exterior lay the architects of the Klan's greatest defeat. And that was exactly how they wanted it. 3 years after settling in Springfield, Lily sat at their kitchen table on a cold December evening, the worn leather ledger open before her. The kerosene lamp cast warm light across pages filled with her precise handwriting. Names, dates, amounts. 317 entries in total. Zeke stood by the wood stove, feeding it split logs. The heat had taken the chill from their small apartment, but he kept adding wood, preparing for the night ahead. Neither of them had spoken much that evening, both understanding what needed to be done. "Strange to think," Lily said, running her finger down a column of figures, how much power these pages held. Her voice was steady, thoughtful. All those receipts, all those names. Zeke moved to stand behind her chair, his hand resting on her shoulder. "News came today from Montgomery. That church we used to pass, the one they burned, they rebuilt it bigger." Lily nodded, still studying the ledger. "I heard some of the children talking at school. Their cousins down south said things are different now. Not good, but different. Quieter. The Klan's still there," Zeke said. "Just hidden deeper, but weaker." Lily closed the ledger carefully. "We made them afraid of shadows. Made them turn on each other. That fear doesn't go away." They had followed the changes through careful correspondence with trusted friends, through newspaper clippings and whispered stories that traveled north. The Klan's power had fractured in ways that couldn't be repaired. Local chapters dissolved, members disappeared into respectable lives, denying any connection. The system that had protected them now worked to forget them. Lily stood, picking up the ledger. Its weight felt familiar in her hands. 3 years of death and justice bound in leather and ink. She moved to the wood stove and opened its iron door. The fire inside burned hot and steady. "Should say something, maybe," Zeke suggested quietly. "Like a prayer or ceremony." Lily shook her head. "No words needed. The work speaks for itself." She held the ledger over the flames, remembering each entry it contained. The first body on that muddy Mississippi road. The nights of planning, the careful records of payment and proof. 317 lives ended by their hands, each death another crack in the foundation of terror. The leather resisted at first, then caught fire. Lily let the ledger fall into the stove. Pages curled and blackened, their careful records turning to ash. Names vanished into smoke. Dates crumbled away. The evidence of their war disappeared into the winter night. Zeke wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, and they watched through the stove's small window as their history burned. The fire consumed everything. The receipts they'd kept as insurance, the maps marked with safe routes, the carefully coded notes that had guided their hunt. "Feel different?" he asked softly. "Feel finished," Lily replied. "Like closing a book we're done reading." They stood together until the ledger was nothing but glowing embers. Outside their window, snow had begun to fall, coating Springfield streets in clean white. Their neighbors' windows glowed with lamplight, ordinary lives unfolding in ordinary ways. Inside their apartment, signs of their new life were everywhere. Student papers waiting to be graded on Lily's desk. Zeke's work boots by the door, covered in factory dust. a radio playing soft music from the corner, pictures on the walls, not family photos, but simple landscapes they'd chosen together. "Remember that first envelope?" Lily asked, turning in Zeke's arms to face him. "How scared we were to open it." "Remember thinking we'd just do one more," Zeke said with a slight smile. "Just enough to get away." "We did get away." Lily touched his face gently. "Just took longer than we planned." The fire popped and settled behind them. The ledger was completely gone now, its ashes mixing with the wooden coals. 3 years of distance had given them perspective on what they'd accomplished. Not victory, not redemption, but something else. They had survived. More than that, they had changed things in ways that couldn't be undone. Lily moved to their small kitchen and poured 2 cups of coffee. They sat at their table, where the ledger had rested just minutes before. The surface was clean now, ready for tomorrow's breakfast, tomorrow's ordinary life. "Think we'll ever feel normal?" Zeke asked, warming his hands on his cup. "We feel what we need to feel," Lily answered. "We sleep at night. We wake up in the morning. We do honest work. That's enough." Outside, the snow continued falling. Inside, they drank their coffee and listened to the radio, 2 people who had walked through fire and emerged transformed. Not innocent, never that, but alive, together, and free to live in the peace they had helped create. I hope you found that story powerful. Leave a like on the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. I have handpicked 2 stories for you that are even more powerful. Have a great day.